So I think in the early days of Kubernetes, we didn't really think too hard about security. We were too focused on being efficient with just deploying Kubernetes to enable us to develop faster and be more agile in the way that we code. I think more recently, as Kubernetes has matured and it's being used in a way that it was intended to be, which is multi-cloud, multi-environment, I think we've seen challenges in how you end up securing Kubernetes in all those different environments. So you want to getting visibility of all your clusters, understanding the risks that are being created by the developers that actually implement and deploy them, and then applying governance and policy is a very tricky thing to do when you've got multi-cloud environments. You've got hundreds of clusters, in some cases thousands of containers. So I'd say that's one big problem. And then the other one is the cultural barriers that come with a brand new paradigm of the way that you actually build infrastructure. We're very used to securing infrastructure in an on-premise data center environment, but these days security teams need to get their head around this new way of thinking about infrastructure, and it's sometimes difficult to apply existing security products to these modern cloud-native ways of building and running infrastructure.
Yep, absolutely. I think if you sort of expand on that, start thinking operationally, security controls around granular access controls, and then also data security, which is the most important thing when it comes to security challenges in Kubernetes. Very often we think about building a zero trust architecture, and what does that mean? How do you ensure that all of your data is encrypted and there is no compromise of data, there are no outages? Designing for that sort of an application that is highly available, fault tolerant, and making sure that they are secure is the challenge that organizations are trying to address. Yep. So obviously, you are here at KubeCon. Most of the conversations that you're hearing is all about AI, so there is a lot of momentum, a lot of interest in what generative AI does, how it helps developers. So if you sort of think about developers and the way they operate, every developer is there to write some code. So they write code, they commit the code somewhere, whether it is GitHub or any of the source control systems that they have. From an AI perspective, the whole idea of helping and ensuring that developers' productivity is increasing security-wise starts with some integrations into their IDEs. Copilot, for example, helps them build better code that is not vulnerable, that has all of the latest patches, that sort of a thing. And when you commit the code, you need to go through and manage all of the supply chain concerns where images are signed, code has a appropriate DCO, and also ensuring that when it is deployed eventually in Kubernetes, you are assured that the code that you're running is trusted code. So all of these things essentially is part of a developer workflow. But when you get to the deployment itself, there are tools like Kubernetes GPT, which actually help you sort of use AI as a way to deploy and manage resources in an effective way. But one of the things that Matt just talked about was visibility, and that is the continuous improvement and continuous thing that you have to look at through a lens of AI as you deploy and run applications, because it's not just about deploying and forgetting about it. You have to continuously monitor it, and there are AI tools that are constantly trying to understand and manage drift. If there is a drift in configuration, we need to know about it. And those are the kind of things that AI helps developers to effectively build applications for scale, and many enterprises typically look for that sort of thing.
Just to add, from my perspective, most of the tooling I see applied to Kubernetes and infrastructure around AI is focused on how to do best practice building of that infrastructure rather than applying AI to improve the security of it. So Copilot, for example, helps you build better code or write code ideally more securely. Kate's GPT is a way to help you do reference architecture in Kubernetes slightly better. What I'm starting to see more of is people thinking about how they use all of the code and the data they've written and applying AI to actually look into some of that drift and explore risks. And I feel like that's not quite where we're at yet, but we're getting to that point where we're starting to see more AI tooling sort of starting to sort of to help us with some of those challenges. But right now, most of the AI I see being developed is to help people build and write infrastructure. It's not specifically to sort of focus specifically on the security posture or issues or risks once the infrastructure's been built. And that's what I'm waiting to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Oh, absolutely. That's obviously the space we are in. Venafi is a company that's been around for the last 15 years. We have 600 plus customers who are managing keys and certificates. Specifically, as I sort of help build the context for Kubernetes, in addition to being an enterprise company, we are also a huge open source contributors and also maintainers. So Cert Manager, which is also in the Project Pavilion, is a project that we sort of manage and also help build managing certificates in Kubernetes. So basically the idea is that when you need some kind of an identity for your workloads in Kubernetes, you have an effective way of managing the entire life cycle of it for the workload. So when you do authentication and when you do authorization, so you have a seamless way of managing it. That's the space Venafi is in. And obviously we've built a lot of ecosystem around it through generative AI, for example. There are other infrastructure as code providers who have taken what we have done with Venafi and Cert Manager and built it as part of their AI model. So when you use infrastructure as code and say, build a machine, secure this service, and behind the scenes it's Cert Manager which is providing that, but those are all AI prompts that are tied back to Venafi to secure those applications. So that's essentially where the AI, the combination of AI and Venafi and also Kubernetes sort of works in place. But we see a lot of this, the idea of workloads and managing those workloads, having a first-class identity for workloads and also help federate identities across multiple different cloud providers. That's the biggest challenge that we're seeing at Venafi. And all of the things that we're doing and you're seeing here and the announcements that we have made today at Press is basically to help manage those identities at scale and also help manage the authentication, the authorization with this notion of a workload identity issuer that helps manage identities at scale just in time for workloads. That is the business we are in, basically to be able to help manage certificates and keys, protect them, and also ensuring that when somebody is deploying workloads in Kubernetes, those images have their provenance that can be tied back to the organization's trust anchor. So, because very often we see that, oh, you're running some code, it needs to be signed. Who signs it? How do you sign it? How do you know that it's the organization that is running the code is the one who built it? So all of those provenance needs to be established to address all of the supply chain security concerns. That's the other space that we are in, basically to ensure that everything that you run is trusted, everything that you run is backed by a cryptographically verifiable document, everything has visibility around security and keys, and everything follows the compliance and the governance rules that are defined by the organization. That is all what we do at Venafi.
If you're setting up a company, you're going to set up a network, and you're going to think about hiring people. So hiring someone, you're going to get very careful about who they are, what access they have to what machines in the company. And obviously it's a very well-known world of identity and access management, or IAM. But what's not so well understood is how you think about all of those machines and containers and pieces of code that run in your business. And if those machines aren't effectively managed and given an identity, then there's no way of knowing who they're talking to, what they're doing, whether they're autonomous, whether they're a risk, whether they should be there, they should not be there, whether they've got hard-coded keys or secrets built into them that can be compromised. And so what Venafi is very good at doing, in the same way that you think about IAM applied to human identities, we do the same thing for machines. And we're fortunate in the fact that we created a piece of open source software that is the de facto way of doing that for Kubernetes. So if you install Kubernetes, the first add-on that you tend to install is Venafi Cert Manager. And Cert Manager is is downloaded millions of times and is the de facto way of being able to manage identities in Kubernetes. And we do that via applying certificates, or X509 certificates. So we are the best at doing machine identity and certificate management. And once you have worked out how you can do that, you can then apply the same sort of value around corporate governance and policy and control to workloads. And you can do that in multiple cloud environments. And you start to realize that when the number of machines inside an organization is growing at a phenomenal rate, we're talking 50 to 1 compared to growth of human identities, you're going to need something to manage, control, and secure those machines, and that's what Venafi does.
Yeah, so obviously, this KubeCon, there is a lot of talk about AI, generative AI, and how it helps Kubernetes. So a lot of it has to do with, seamlessly providing ways to deploy and manage resources at scale. Because one of the things that we have established, and you know very well as well, is adoption of Kubernetes has increased rapidly in the last few years. And it's only increasing with number of workloads, number of resources that run, which also means many of them want to do a lot of automation, a lot of hands-off approach where they want things to be done in a way where it is natural to just think about, I want to deploy a certain set of resources, I want to scale it in this way, I want to make sure that it's always available X percentage of time, and these all should be expressed in some shape or form through prompts, and then let the system take care of how these services and applications run. And I think that's essentially where we are starting to see. And at Venafi, we actually have what we call Venafi Athena, which is our product basically to help accelerate and manage how resources are developed, resources are deployed, and resources are scaled automatically using generative AI prompts. And we have our own sort of a language model that we've built based on the understanding of how machine identities should be provisioned, should be done, and should be managed. And I think that's one aspect. And we're also seeing a lot of interest and also a lot of adoption with some of the very common technologies. Like, for example, specifically within AI, you'll see a lot of people developing projects on Hugging Face, where they want to take some model, whatever generative AI model that they have, and apply some learnings and define some prompts. So in order to extend and address the challenges and also go beyond what today we are doing, we have made that project available. It's called Project Vikram Explorer on Hugging Face. So that way people who are adopting and running Kubernetes can actually extend it and make it much more seamless for people to adopt and do things, right? So, because end of the day, most organizations are looking to develop and run their entire business logic on Kubernetes. They are betting on Kubernetes as a platform to deliver value to their customers, which also means that, from a scale, from an automation perspective, they have to be 100% reliable on the fact that it runs as it is expected to run. So this is where AI is going to help a lot, and a lot of it has to do with how you can automate things, but also drive it through AI with minimal sort of a prompting to adjust those resources and manage those resources. One, at the time of deployment. Two, at the time of operation, because there are two aspects to it. Because in Kubernetes, you talk about deployment, there is also an AI-assisted SREs, right? So how do you troubleshoot? How do you sort of manage what's going on? How do you understand that the CPU limits are properly managed? How do you understand that the memory limits are properly managed? All of these are SRE functions. There's a lot of focus on AI-assisted SREs that is now starting to develop over a period of time. You'll probably see a lot more of it in the next year or so, but that's essentially where I'm seeing what's going, right?
I think my feeling is that the AI models are going to get smaller, more specific. There's going to be more open source models, and the way that you're going to be able to apply value by using these AI models is based on the data that you have. And Venafi is in a very privileged position in that most of the global 500 are customers of ours, and so we get amazing access as to how the types of issues that big enterprises struggle with when it comes to managing identities and machines in multiple cloud environments. And so what I'm excited about is some of the work that Sitaram just talked about, and how we think about applying products like Athena and some of the models we've been doing with Vikram Explorer to get very good at using that data to spot patterns in how our customers can start to respond to the types of issues that they're going to see. And I just feel like that is just going to become more and more and more powerful and valuable to the point where it won't be long before Venafi probably becomes an AI company because of the history and the foundation and platform and the data that we have access to. And I think that's what I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah. No, so Matt mentioned an important point, because one of the things that many organizations do is they do not allow public large language models like ChatGPT. Like many organizations block access to it. So which is why you'll also see very focused small language models that are focused on how the applications work. Because you may have seen, in news articles where some airlines had the AI chatbot responded in a different way for something. Those are the kind of things that happens when you have a public large language model. So you will start to see those go away, or at least not used in a large context, but smaller language models being developed with a focused outcome that is specific to a customer or specific to an organization. That will be more powerful and addresses the specific challenges that needs to be done. And I think those are the kind of things we'll start to see very often.